We're on the record. It's October the 22nd, 2013. It's 9:20 a.m. in the Circuit Court, 4th Judicial Circuit, in and for Nassau County, Florida. Case number 13 CA 485. It's the City of Fernandina Beach, a municipal corporation of the state of Florida, plaintiff. State of Florida and the taxpayers, property owners, and citizens of the City of Fernandina Beach, Florida, including non-residents owning property or subject to taxation therein, and others claiming any right, title, or interest in property to be affected by the issuance of the Series 2013B bonds herein described, or to be affected in any way thereby. Defendants thereby. This is a explanation of that statement. The validation of the City of Fernandina Beach, Florida Utility System Refunding Revenue Bonds, Series 2013B in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5 million. This is the video deposition of Joseph Gerrity. The court reporter is Lorraine Mueller. My name is Gary Cowan. I'm the videographer. Counselors, will you please introduce yourself for the record?
Gil Feltel, Tanner Bishop Law Firm, on behalf of defendant intervener Joanne Conlon. I'm joined here by my colleague Matt Detzel.
Clinch Kavanaugh, plaintiff, co-counsel. I'm sorry, defendant.
Okay.
And my name is Susan Cherudy with the law firm of Bryant, Hill & Olive, and with me I have Jason Bruck from our law firm.
All right. Madam Court Reporter, will you please swear in the witness?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Joseph Gerrity, Jr.
And Mr. Gerrity, if you'd also give us a business address, please.
204 Ash Street, Fernandina Beach, Florida.
What's the zip code there?
32034.
Thank you. Mr. Gerrity, obviously we met before the deposition. My name is Gil Feltel. I'm an attorney representing Joanne Conlon, who is one of the defendants and intervener in this action. I'd like to ask you a series of questions today. Have you ever been deposed before?
Yes, sir, I have.
And if I'm not mistaken, your line of work is often recorded as well, correct? In terms of meetings and things of that nature?
Absolutely.
So the process that we're going through here with having a court reporter to take things down and a videographer to record the proceedings, that's not unfamiliar to you?
No, it's not.
Okay. Even still, I'm going to just go over a couple of ground rules. First off, I'm going to do my best to ask a question clearly. Sometimes I will not. To the extent that occurs, if you would please let me know, I will be happy to try to rephrase the question.
Okay.
Secondly, as you know, we've got a court reporter taking this down. It would be very helpful if you would answer the questions orally. So as opposed to a nod of the head or something of that nature. Sometimes over the course of a deposition it's easy to get sort of conversational back and forth. We need to be mindful of the fact we have a record to maintain.
Certainly.
Is there anything today affecting you as a condition or medication or something of that nature that would in any way impact your ability to give truthful answers?
No, sir.
What is your current job title, sir?
I'm the city manager at Fernandina Beach.
And if you could, just give me a bit of a description. What does that mean to be the city manager of Fernandina Beach?
I have 14 department heads that report directly to me, and I'm responsible for the administration of the city of Fernandina Beach.
Okay. And is there, and I'll be thinking about it sort of like a corporation, is there a board of directors that might oversee some of your activities?
We have a city commission that I report directly to.
And are the folks in the city commission elected officials?
Yes, sir, they are.
And your present position as city manager, is that elected or is that an employment position?
That's an employment position.
Okay. And how long have you held that title, sir?
Since May 29th, 2012. About 16 months.
Okay. And who was the previous city manager?
There was an interim by the name of Dave Lott, and the previous city manager was Michael Zimbor.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, we'll be talking about some things today that go back a few years. And it appears to me that previously, did you hold the title of mayor of Fernandina Beach?
Yes, I was mayor from May 2002 to May 2004.
Okay. And tell me about the position of mayor here. As a mayor, did you also sit on the city commission?
Yes, the mayor is one of the 5 elected city commissioners. There's a straw poll that is taken every year during the election cycle, and basically the person who wins the straw poll generally for the mayor's position generally gets elected to the mayor's chair.
Okay. And who does the actual electing to the mayor? When you say it's a straw poll, is it something amongst the commissioners?
The straw poll is on the ballot for the citizens.
Yes, sir.
But the actual choice for a city commission, or the mayor, is made by the city commission.
Okay, so there's 5 commissioners, and one of which ultimately is chosen by the other commissioners to be holding the title of mayor as well?
Yes, and generally that's the person that wins the straw poll.
Sure. So you told me the time that you were the mayor. Have you held any other positions in what I'll call political leadership in Fernandina Beach?
No, I was a city commissioner for 6 years.
All right.
I guess you would call that.
Sure, absolutely.
And I was vice mayor 1 year out of those other remaining 4 years.
And please give me the years that you were a city commissioner.
From May 2001 to May 2004, from May 2005 to May 2008.
Okay. From 2004 to 2005, you were not a city commissioner?
No, I was not.
Okay. And as a city commissioner, do you have other employment at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. And is city commissioner a compensated position?
We get $12,000 a year.
Okay. So tell me what you do outside of political leadership here in Fernandina.
During the time I was on the city commission,
Please.
I was active in real estate. I have a real estate broker's license.
Okay. And is that something you still do today, or is that?
No, I do not. I still hold the license, but I don't. My work contract prohibits me from any other outside sources of income.
And so from the time period that you ceased to be a city commissioner, would you say it was 2006?
2008.
2008, I'm sorry. And to the time that you started as the city manager in 2012, what did you do?
I was in Suwannee County as a county coordinator for 21 months.
Okay.
From April 2010 till February 2012.
Did you relocate to Suwannee County during
I
that time?
had an apartment over there.
Maintain a residence here?
Maintained my home here, yes. My wife stayed here.
One thing that I didn't talk about during the course of our instructions, but I want to mention now because I see we're kind of falling into that. Obviously, it's easier for the court reporter to take down if only one of us is speaking at a time. So I'll try very hard to, sometimes I'll be desperate to get to that next question and I'll step on your answer a little bit, and similarly, you may know where I'm going and start to answer a question before I'm completed. So to the extent possible, we'll try to, if I can get your agreement, we'll try to only talk one at a time.
Certainly.
Thank you. So you mentioned a time period that you're in Suwannee County. That didn't cover the entire window from which you were not a city commissioner and not the...
That's correct. From 2008 to about 2010, I actually took a couple courses at University of North Florida and was working a little bit in real estate at the time.
Okay. Other than your time as a commissioner and now as the mayor, have there been any other, and I'll use the term generically, leadership positions in Fernandina Beach, things like committees, things of that nature that you've engaged in?
Actually, I was chairman of the Affordable Housing Task Force in 2000.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
So 2000, I think, is the earliest time we've spoken about. Prior to that, what did you do?
Well, in 1970, I started at McDonald's as a crew person when I was 16.
Yes, sir.
And in 1996, I had 3 franchises, which I sold. So that's pretty much
Okay.
my background.
Okay, so you were in the restaurant industry, and after selling those, you migrated to real estate and also, we'll call it civic activities or political leadership?
Correct.
And I may use awkward terms, so if you've got a better one, please feel free to correct me. That's good, thank you. I want to ask if, do you by chance know my client, Joanne Conlon?
Actually, yes, I do.
Tell me about that, please. How do you know her?
She's my neighbor.
Okay. And how long has she been your neighbor?
I would say 2 to 2.5 years.
And how long have you lived at that address that she's now your neighbor?
5.5 years.
Well, it's interesting that some of the issues that we're talking about are impact fee related at the time that she constructed her house. Was an impact fee something that you paid personally?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And did you have your house constructed roughly 5.5 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned that Ms. Conlon is your neighbor. Have you ever discussed this case with her?
No, not really.
And sometimes I'll have to ask the following, say not really.
No,
But what have y'all discussed?
We have not discussed it. One time she said, "Are you okay with me with the lawsuit?" And I said, "That's fine. I certainly respect what you feel like you need to do."
Understand.
And
Thank
that was
you.
the extent of our discussion.
Well, obviously, we appreciate you being here today for your deposition. Could you tell me what you did to prepare for the deposition?
I spoke with Ms. Gerrity for about an hour and a half. She asked me what I recalled. I relayed that to her, which really honestly isn't a whole heck of a lot since it was 11 years ago. And she informed me that as being an elected official at the time, I really didn't have to answer any questions as to the way I was, or why I was voting or what I thought I was doing, but I'm fine with that. That's not an issue with me.
Okay. And during that, you mentioned a conversation with Ms. Gerrity. Anything else that you've done in preparation for your deposition?
Actually, for this particular, no, there is not.
Okay. Well, as you know, there's also, you mentioned Ms. Conlon asking you if essentially you were okay with her proceeding on the related case, the impact fee case is what we typically have called it. And if I call it the impact fee case, will you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you do anything to prepare, or is anything that you might have done related to the impact fee case sort of inform your preparation for your deposition today?
You want to rephrase that?
Maybe. I'll do my best. That was a bit convoluted. I'm assuming, and perhaps wrongly, that you may have had some involvement in the impact fee case in terms of being familiar with the issues or familiar with the progress of the case, anything of that nature?
Well, by nature of my job, yes, I'm very familiar with the case.
And so really what I was trying to ask is you mentioned that other than meeting with Ms. Gerrity one time, that was the entirety of your preparation for this deposition. And I was asking, really, you may have a knowledge base about some of these issues related to the impact fee case, and I was wondering if anything that you did in keeping up with the impact fee case is informing your understanding for today's deposition.
Rephrase. I don't quite understand what your question is. Well,
You know, maybe another way of asking that would be, would it be a true statement that you know something about the issues that are being contested in the impact fee case?
Yes, and let me just say that we had another law firm that was working in conjunction on the impact fee case, and there was a book of information, a notebook of information that was put together and presented to me. I had a deposition scheduled earlier, but that was canceled, so I never really went through the book.
Okay, so to the extent that you might have been deposed in the other case and had the possibility of reviewing those materials, it's something you didn't really do at the time?
Right.
Okay. When you met with Ms. Gerrity, did she provide you any documents to review?
No, sir.
And other than Ms. Trudy, did you discuss your deposition with anybody else?
Our city attorney, Tammy Bach, just a little bit.
Any communications with anyone from FPU? And FPU, for purposes here, is Florida Public Utilities.
Regarding?
Regarding any of the issues related to either the bond validation or the impact fee case?
No, sir.
Do you know who George Bachman is?
No, sir.
How about Jerry Hartman? Do you know who he is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And did you have any conversations with Mr. Hartman about your deposition?
No, not about my deposition.
Anything about the issues in the bond validation case and the impact fees?
We had a discussion shortly after I was appointed city manager. He came and stopped by. That was about a year ago. And we just discussed briefly the case and the merits of it and where he thought it was going.
Okay. And what did Mr. Hartman tell you then?
He said that what we did was by the book and there's no reason for us to be concerned.
Okay. Was this a meeting that you had scheduled with Mr. Hartman, or did he just...
No, he happened to be in the area. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
He happened to be in the area and he stopped in to say hello.
And did you get the impression he specifically came to talk to you about that particular issue?
No, sir.
Okay.
I believe Mr. Hartman works with Nassau County on their utility, and he happened to be doing some work with Nassau County, and he just stopped in to say hello.
Okay. And that would have been shortly after you became city manager?
I would say within 6 months, yes.
All right. So sometime in 2012?
Yes, sir.
How about, do you know who William Sundstrom is, or Bill Sundstrom?
The name's familiar. I believe he may have been the attorney for FPU when they were in the process of selling the water system to us.
Okay. Did you have any personal interactions with Mr. Sundstrom?
No, sir.
And I think you also spoke about Ms. Trudy and also someone from the Rumberger firm that you had prepared a notebook for you?
Yes.
And other than, and I think you may have already answered this, but other than the one conversation with Ms. Trudy, no other preparation in terms of meeting with lawyers other than a brief conversation with Tammy Bach?
That's correct.
For any of those conversations, did you take any notes or
No, sir.
any written communications, emails, or anything of that nature with anybody else about your depot?
Other than notice of the deposition, no, sir.
All right. More scheduling, administrative type stuff?
Actually, this is what I have.
Okay. So since you were saying this is what you have, do with this. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1 to your deposition. Ask if you recognize it, sir.
Yes, I do recognize it.
And what do you recognize it to be?
I recognize it to be a notice for me to appear at a certain place at a certain time to give a deposition.
Okay. There's been other discovery taken. Have you read any transcripts or read any pleadings or anything of that nature in preparation for your deposition?
Not that I can recall.
A lot of the things you mentioned 11 years ago earlier, a lot of the things I want to ask you about today are going to relate to the city's acquisition of the FPU water system in a transaction that closed, I believe, in March of 2003. Just for clarity of the record, what was your role with the city of Fernandina Beach in late 2002 and early 2003?
I was the mayor.
Okay. I want to start, sir, with showing you an exhibit. He's got that, all of them right there. I think we'll just let him keep a stack if that's all right with you, Madam Court Reporter. Ask if you please take a look at Exhibit 2, and when you've had a chance to understand what it is in front of you, I may have some questions for you about
Well,
it.
I can tell you it's the minutes from a meeting.
Okay. Do you recognize this format of document?
Yes.
All right. It purports to be, at least in terms of, it says it's the minutes of a special meeting occurring July 9, 2002, and I believe it actually occurred at the City Golf Course Clubhouse. Do you have any recollection of that meeting?
Actually, I do not.
Okay. I'm going to, if we look, the third or second sentence indicates, says, present were Mayor Joe Gerrity presiding, Vice Mayor Ron Sapp, and it also goes through a list of people. Do you have any reason to believe that this would be inaccurate in terms of minutes indicating that you attended and were presiding over the meeting?
No, sir, I do not.
I want to turn your attention to, I believe is the fourth page of the exhibit. It'll bear a number in the lower right-hand corner, PRR 003074.
Yes, sir.
And I'll represent to you that the ones that are marked PRR, these are ones that we received pursuant to a public records request. And specifically, I wanted to look at the last item on this particular page. The title is Expansion of Utility Service Areas. Do you recall what it was that Fernandina Beach was doing in the middle of 2002 related to expansion of utility service areas?
No, I do not.
Makes reference to some comments made by then city manager Bob Burns. And is Bob or Rob or Robert? What's the?
We used to call him Bob.
Bob, okay. And I don't mean to be too informal, but I'll refer to him as Bob Burns or Mr. Burns through the course of the deposition. You'll know who I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
Referring to comments made by Mr. Burns, and I'm flipping over to the next page, 3075. The conversation here turns to a discussion as to whether or not the city of Fernandina Beach should consider purchasing either one or more water utilities, the FPU utility and the what I'll call the AIU utility, the island utility. Do you recall any of those discussions or what the issues were associated with those discussions at the time?
Well, I don't recall the specific discussions.
Sure.
Quite frankly, I don't recall the issues other than the fact that the purchase price and did the city want to basically take the risk of the chance of purchasing a water system or two water utility systems.
Okay. Do you recall when even it came into the city's, as the mayor of the city and one of the commissioners, do you recall when it was that the city of Fernandina even first gave any thought whatsoever to the possibility of acquiring these utilities?
No, I do not.
And the reason I ask that question, we've got a special meeting occurring at the golf course, and we've got a item here called expansion of utility service areas, but as I read, particularly page 3074, bottom of that, and then 3075, the conversation immediately turns to the question of whether or not the city should be acquiring these facilities. Mr. Mearns appears to be sort of leading the issue, if you will. Do you know whether there was any prior discussion with Mr. Mearns or anybody else that you participated in or were aware of occurring about whether or not the city should consider this acquisition?
Well, I do remember Mr. Mearns calling me one day and asking me what I thought about acquiring the FPU water system. And I thought, my answer to him was that I thought it was something that was worth looking into.
Okay. And do you know why you thought it was worth looking into?
Well, I think that at the time we were in the midst of a pretty substantial building boom here on the island, and owning the water system along with the other utility, the sewer utility, would allow us to direct that development in direction we wanted it to go in.
Okay. So it would have been something that would have given the city additional influence over where development would occur?
I don't know if influence is the word I would use, but it would help us, it would allow us to say, you know, there are utilities here, you can develop in this area, as opposed to no utilities here.
Okay.
Allow us to give our city some direction.
In fact, Mr. Mearns, reading from the minutes here, it says he expressed his opinion that to control the utilities is to control the city's destiny in terms of annexation. Were there annexation issues that were ongoing at that point?
There's always ongoing annexation issues here.
Okay. In terms of expanding the footprint of the city?
Well, expanding the footprint of the city. There's a issue with the unincorporated area that they don't want to be annexed because of the additional taxes that they perceive they will incur. I think that's pretty common in most municipalities. So that's pretty much where we're at with that, where we're at.
In the next sentence, referring to Mr. Mearns' comments in the meeting, it says he provided further details of how the city could exercise its rights under Chapter 180 to extend the wastewater system. Do you know what he's referring to there?
Specifically, no, but I would assume he was referring to the identifying a service area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to skip down then to the last paragraph that starts on 3075. It says, Mayor Gerrity expressed his opinion that the water system, sanitation, and sewage were, quote, must-do, end quote, services, and the city runs all those systems fine. I guess my first question, which of those services was the city actually running at that point?
We owned the sewer system at the time.
Okay. But in terms of the water system or sanitation, were those things that were run by the city at that point?
We were in the sanitation system. The water system was owned by FPU.
Okay.
We purchased it in 2003.
And so when you say that these were must-do services, do you know what you meant by that?
I don't recall that. I don't recall actually saying that either.
Do you have any reason to believe that the minutes are incorrect?
No, I do not.
Next thing here is that Vice Mayor Sapp explained that he had been through 2 FPU franchise renewals and commented that if the city suggests buying it, then the city commission better be prepared for a lot of opposition from the general public. Do you recall anything about that conversation and opposition from the general public associated with such an acquisition?
I do not recall that comment that Commissioner Sapp made. Mm-hmm. Nor do I recall any opposition to the city purchasing the water system.
Okay. So if Mr. Sapp was predicting opposition, that's not something you recall ever occurring? Either his prediction or that any opposition occurred?
I don't recall him predicting it, and we didn't have any opposition.
You mentioned a couple of prior city managers. Bob Mearns was the city manager in 2002 and 2003. Do you know when he left or ceased being the city manager?
I believe it was in October of 2005.
As of October 2005, were you part of the city commission?
Yes, I was.
What were the circumstances under which Mr. Mearns left?
He resigned.
Okay. Do you know why he resigned?
No, I do not. He just offered his resignation at a public meeting, and it was accepted by the majority of the commission.
Do you know what, you mentioned that it was offered at a public meeting. That, I don't know if that's a typical way for a city manager to resign. Was there some issue or something that caused him to resign?
Not that I know of.
Was he asked for his resignation?
Not by me.
Okay, how about anybody else in the city commission?
I do not know.
Do you recall any of the other circumstances? You obviously remember at a public meeting he offered his resignation. Do you recall any of the circumstances that might have been related to that?
Well, I think there were some ongoing issues with building code interpretations, and we had just gone through a difficult period with some homes that that violated height ordinances. So,
And what was Mr. Mearns' role with those homes that violated height ordinance?
well, he was responsible for the actions of the Community Development Department and permitting.
So was there permits being issued that perhaps should not have been?
Well, I will say that there were permits issued for homes that violated the height restrictions in the city.
So they were contrary to the current law?
They were contrary to the law at the time.
Yeah. At the time that Mr. Mearns ceased being or offered his resignation as the city manager, did you personally have confidence in him at that point?
I don't recall.
Do you recall doing anything to try to dissuade him from offering his resignation?
No, sir, I do not.
Staying with this Exhibit 2, if you'd change to page 378, 3078. This was just something I'm curious about. Looking at the second paragraph, or sorry, the first paragraph that actually starts on 378, third sentence. It says, Mayor Gerrity questioned why the lighthouse had become a $150,000 liability that the city acquired. There's some exchange between you and Mr. Mearns as to why this occurred. And I guess my question is that, do you recall anything related to the city lighthouse? My impression in reading this is the city lighthouse transaction didn't turn out the way you thought it was going to. Do you recall any of that?
Quite frankly, I don't recall any of it.
And the next page on 3079, about 5 or 6 lines from the bottom, it's talking about fee adjustment, impact fees, permit fees, marina fees, and it says Mayor Gerrity inquired if the billing discrepancy with FPU had been straightened out. Do you recall a billing discrepancy with FPU?
No, I do not.
Is there anything about this meeting or the run-up to this meeting that I've failed to ask you about that you do recall?
No, sir.
Back on 3075, Mr. Mearns makes a reference to Hartman and Associates talking about the utility transaction, says that they can, quote, provide an explanation about how the whole thing works. Did you know who Hartman was at this time?
I'd heard the name bandied about by in a couple of discussions regarding utility acquisitions, but I had no solid knowledge of who they were other than they were utility consultants.
Okay. Did Mr. Hartman ultimately provide this explanation to the commission as to how this would work?
I don't recall, but I do know that he was our consultant during the transaction.
There's also some conversation here at this July 9, 2002 meeting about whether or not there was a line item budget for this type of an acquisition. I believe Vice Mayor Sapp may have raised that issue. At the time, did the city have money set aside to do an acquisition like this?
I don't recall.
I believe the minutes indicate that there was not a budget for it. Do you have any reason to believe that's inaccurate?
No, I do not.
And in fact, actually, when the acquisition occurred, it was financed with debt, correct?
That is correct.
Did Fernandina put any cash into the deal?
I don't believe we did.
I'm now going to turn your attention to what we have marked as Exhibit 3. I'm sorry?
One for me.
That is yours.
Oh, sorry, thanks.
I just faked you out by starting to hand it to the court reporter first because
Got it.
I misdirected it.
I will certainly let you have it.
Mr. Gary, I'd ask that you please look at what's been marked as Exhibit 3 and let me know when you're ready.
Is there something specifically you want me to look at?
Well, I guess I'd start with just simply, do you know what this is? The document?
Yes, these are minutes from a workshop meeting.
Do you recall that workshop meeting?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. It indicates in the first paragraph that present were Mayor Joe Gerrity presiding. Do you have any reason to believe you did not preside over that meeting?
None whatsoever.
And I was just, as a matter of curiosity, it says Mayor Gerrity called the meeting to order and dispensed with the normal formalities. What are the normal formalities?
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. So those are the types of things.
And a prayer.
And a prayer. Okay.
Yes.
Those are things that would normally be at the initial part of the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. It then indicates it was a presentation by Jerry Hartman and Jennifer Woodall. Do you recall any portion of that presentation?
No, I do not.
Do you know the purpose for this meeting?
Well, if I read the minutes, I would.
You're welcome to look at it as much as you want, sir.
Without thoroughly reading it, it's a discussion of the acquisition of the 2 utility systems.
Do you know whether or not, we looked in the prior exhibit, which was the July meeting, that the issue was first discussed. And then we have this September workshop meeting. Do you know whether there's any other intervening discussions amongst the city council or city commission as to whether or not to proceed with the acquisition?
I don't recall.
Looking at about the middle of the first paragraph under the presentation by Jerry Hartman and Jennifer Woodall, there's a statement there that Vice Mayor Sapp inquired what ERC represented, which Mr. Hartman replied, equivalent residential connections. My question is, do you ever recall anything about the ERCs being something to be considered as part of this transaction?
No, I do not.
Going down to the bottom of that first paragraph, it makes reference to, it says, Mayor Gerrity commented that a resolution was passed asking the county to withdraw from the FGUA, and the letter in response from the county coordinator basically said that the city had everything all wrong. What is that referring to?
Well, I really can't give a very specific answer to your question. However, I do remember that the FGUA was, and my memory serves me correctly, was a small group of counties that had acquired utility systems throughout the state. And quite honestly, I found it very fascinating at the time. And they were relatively small counties. But other than that, I don't know what the answer to your question would be.
Okay. So when it refers to a resolution that was passed asking the county to withdraw from the FGUA, do you know what resolution that's referring to?
No, sir, I do not.
So you don't know whether that be a city or a county resolution?
No, I do not.
And it refers to a response saying that the city had everything all wrong. That would indicate to me that it might have been a city resolution. Do you know when it says the city had everything all wrong, what that references, what you were saying at the time?
No, sir, I do not. If the city passed a resolution, it would be in the book of resolutions.
Okay. But at least today you don't have any recollection of that.
No, sir, I do not.
Do you recall, just talking more generally about the transaction to acquire the water utility from FPU, what types of factors went into the city's decision in terms of, as you sit here today, can you recall what was important to the city about the transaction?
Well, yes, I can recall a few things. First of all, as you previously mentioned, we didn't have any cash to put in it. So any transaction that we did would have to generate enough revenue to pay for itself and any improvements without any down payment, basically.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much was a major concern.
Because the next thing that actually, right after we talked, the last sentence we just talked about, it says, after some discussion about the information presented, City Manager Mearns requested clarification of the 18,015 or 18,015,000 figure presented. Mr. Hartman explained that the figure was the debt capacity of the system at a certain interest rate. Do you have any understanding of what it is that means, the debt capacity of the system at a certain interest rate?
From a general business standpoint, yes.
Okay. What do you understand it to mean?
That the revenues from the system would sustain the debt.
Would you agree that depending on the revenues or the value of what you're purchasing, particularly as a real estate professional, there's going to be a limit to what you can borrow to acquire that, correct?
Absolutely.
And so when Mr. Hartman refers to this being the debt capacity of the system, do you know what he's saying?
Yes, I think I just explained that to you, that the system's revenues would generate enough to satisfy the debt capacity at a certain interest rate versus a purchase price.
And is it true that the city was intending to issue bonds to pay for this?
That is correct.
And so in the bond underwriting process, is debt capacity something that's important?
I can't answer in this specific case,
Sure.
but I would assume that that is the case. Generally, yes.
Okay, do you have any
I mean,
reason
they're
to think this specific case would be different than what
No, I
is
do
generally done in bond issues to pay for acquisitions?
No, I do not.
And then at the bottom of this page, 3085, it says Mayor Gerrity inquired if the city decided to borrow $55 million, what the city pledged for repayment, or what would the city pledge for repayment be? And do you recall asking that question?
No, I do not recall.
Reading it here today, do you have an understanding of what you were asking or were concerned about?
Yes.
Tell me about that, please.
I was concerned about, again, the revenues from any purchase we made being strong enough to carry the debt service associated with it without a pledge from any ad valorem dollars.
Okay. So would it be a fair characterization of what you said, that if the city was going to buy the system, it had to be self-sustaining?
Yes, sir.
And then going over to the next page, bottom of the first paragraph on 3086, it says Vice Mayor Sapp